Hello, my name's John Robertson. I photograph landscapes and wildlife across the U.S. And no matter what camera brand that you use, there are certain camera settings that will greatly benefit your success at photographing wildlife. You'll still need to have good composition skills and knowledge of your subjects to get the best possible images. But for today, let's talk about the camera settings that I use for my wildlife photography. I have been photographing wildlife for several years, and these are the settings that I have grown into and that I use today. I photograph landscapes and wildlife and use different camera settings for each and then program them into my camera memory settings. I recommend that you program your wildlife settings once you complete the settings so that you can easily recall them to initialize your camera. No need to go through the menu again. And also you should customize your custom buttons for settings that may need to change on the fly. Or you can program them into your function menu. In general, I shoot wildlife in manual mode with auto ISO. Since the shutter speed and the aperture are the primary controls for your artistic input during wildlife settings, I prefer to set these myself and let ISO adjust automatically. I also use dual back button focus so that I can quickly adjust focus area as needed given the conditions. And since wildlife photography is so dynamic, I use customized buttons for parameters that I may want to change on the fly for dynamic situations. So let's go ahead and go through the settings. And for reference, this is the setup that I'm using on my Sony A1. Most Sony Alpha cameras have similar options, if not exact. Other camera brands such as Nikon and Canon will have similar options as well, but perhaps the names are going to be different or some slight different adjustments are needed. If you have any questions or suggestions on these settings, please comment below. Also, if you could, please click the like button and subscribe if you'd like to see more of this content, as well as more in the field photography of both wildlife and landscape. So I'm showing here the menu on the Sony A1, and the first selection that I'm going to go through is image quality. I'm not going to go through every item line by line, only those that I am changing for my wildlife setting configuration. So for me, image quality setting, I use file format RAW. Raw file type, I use lossless compressed large. I find this to be the sweet spot in the selection where I still get great image quality even though it's compressed, but I get a little reduced file sizes for saving onto my SD card. Next is aspect ratio. I simply start with a selection of 3:2. That's the native size of the aspect ratio on the Sony Alpha sensors. And I also have the option programmed into my function menu to change the aspect ratio should I desire. Though I mainly do that for landscape photos. For wildlife, I don't change it a whole lot, but should I want to, it is programmed into my function menu. Next is the drive mode. First option is the continuous shooting speed. And on the Sony A1, there is a mode dial that you can select between high, medium, and low. And then on this menu option, you can program in what the shooting speed is. So I simply select for high 20 images per second, mid 15 images a second, and low 5 images per second. Should also mention that I am using electronic shutter only. And here on silent mode settings, I have silent mode turned on, and that puts everything into electronic shutter. Then we go to image stabilization. This is grayed out now because my lens has this selection on there. So with the selection of the switch on my lens, I can have steady shot on or off. So now let's talk about the exposure settings that I have programmed in. For ISO, as I said, I use ISO Auto, and then I set my range limit between 100 and 10,000. For metering mode, this is currently selected to multi, but I also have a custom button customized so that I can rotate between the different settings if I desire, such as the case where I have a dark subject against a light background or vice versa. White balance I set to auto. Zebra displays I have currently turned off, which is typically what I do for wildlife photography. I find the zebras get in the way. But I do have that option as well programmed to a custom button to turn it on in case I would desire. I had customized my zebra levels where I have it set to 104 and above to initiate the zebras. Now let's go to the focus settings. I use AF continuous, and then I have the release set for when I release the shutter button that it releases the shutter. There are other options. AF will wait until there's confirmation from the system that it has indeed locked autofocused or balanced to somewhere in between. I have found that for my use, the release option works the best, and I don't have any waiting frame to frame to get the shots. AF tracking sensitivity, I use 3 standard as my default. However, as with other cases, I have a custom button that I use to be able to rapidly change between those if I desire. And there are certain conditions where you'll want to make changes to have it locked on versus responsive. But 3 is somewhere in the middle and a good starting point for when I initialize my camera. Next is AF with shutter, which I have turned off because I use dual back button focus. Next we have focus area. I have set to wide, but again I have a custom button set up so that I could rapidly change between the focus area options. We then have focus area limit, which I said allows me then to down select the focus area selections as I toggle between them. And so for my settings, I have allowed focus area of wide, focus area spot, and focus area large. Next we have face eye autofocus, and I have that turned on. Face eye subject on the Sony A1, you can select between bird, animal, and human. I've got this set to bird, but as you can guess, I have a custom button that I have customized to rotate between those 3 selections. And as I had mentioned on the customize buttons, I can go to the customize operation customize here and do custom key settings. And this shows the settings that I currently have on my camera, where as you can see the ISO dial I have left unchanged. Button number 2, which is typically AEL, I have reprogrammed to tracking on and autofocus on. So that allows, this is part of the dual back button focus, where number 2 uses the tracking areas for autofocus, and number 3 uses the non-tracking areas for autofocus. So that gives me the 2 selections for back button focus by just a simple thumb selection. And then I can even more quickly rotate between using tracking and non-tracking focus areas. As I said, also then for button number 6, which is C4, I have used that for my metering mode selection so that I can toggle between the metering modes. Also, I have custom buttons set up for AF MF selector toggle. So with the press of that button, I can switch between autofocus and manual focus in case I wanted to take manual focus of, let's say, if there's a difficult subject hidden behind grass or trees, I can attempt to manual focus in on it. As I said, I also have the face eye subject select toggle. That's number 2. White balance I've left unchanged. Number 4 is the AF tracking sensitivity. And then number 5 is toggling between APS-C 35 and full frame. On the top, I've left aperture and shutter speed unchanged from their original dials. Number 3, I have the zebra display select. That's so I can toggle on or off the zebra displays. Number 4 is where that I can switch the focus areas between the options that I have selected. Okay, then we can go to the finder frame rate. It's another change you should make. Here we go, finder frame rate. Now you can select this from a standard high to higher. Of course, as you go up, you're going to burn up a little bit more battery. I use the highest that I can because with, of course, with the wildlife, especially birds in flight, being able to have that fast refresh rate on your viewfinder is very helpful. So once you have those set, you should go to your program memory selection so that you can burn those into your memory. And that is on shooting mode, camera set memory. And I use my memory mode dial number 2 to program in and register my settings for my wildlife photography. So those are my settings for wildlife photography. And as I said, if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. And if you could, please like and subscribe. Thank you very much.